War experiments. The Nazi reign was famous for its backdoor scientists and occult researchers. Special expeditionary divisions of the Reich were often sent out in search of artifacts or locations of occult or religious significance. Meanwhile, in Germany, bunkers were assembled and mansions and castles were fitted with labyrinths and dungeons, which were filled with strange experiments and research notes. Whenever the Allies found these places, they were often gutted, burned, or otherwise destroyed and abandoned. Whenever a lab was found intact, the research was often incoherent or missing, or later destroyed by the Allies to prevent the Nazis from recovering any hidden data. A lot of the Nazi experiments were kept under the radar. That was until recently. Veterans who served as guards to the labs and ritual zones have explained what they have seen. Or photos and books have been uncovered in boxes and crates belonging to the scientists. A fair few of these contain a common research goal: giving man the power of God. Exactly the true nature is often up to debate, but it appears that this is often described in the Nazi research as immortality, invincibility, or other factors surrounding losing the capacity to die in some way or another. The larger part of this research was actually legitimately based. Certain doses of chemical compounds to age blood flow in aging people. First concepts that are now used in today's transplant surgery. Grafting, ointments that renew skin, antibodies to various diseases, and fitness and dieting research. However, one set of crates discovered in Hamburg in 1999 went way off of this research style. This stuff crossbred with the occult experiments and immortality research. Mind is the disease. The introductory folders and proofs of concept of the research began with the principle that the brain controls the body completely and wholly, and as the body slowly degrades around it, it continues to function. Further statements say that the reason the body is left to degrade is because the human brain is set on a biological timer, such as why butterflies can only live a day, yet other insects can often last much longer. In short, the brain tells us to die. It was proposed that as the brain grows, it begins to make connections, resulting in the human becoming more mature and having an advanced brain. At the age of 35 to 50, however, these connections slowly break down, resulting in forgetfulness, dementia, and other mental diseases reserved for the elderly. Their proposal. The Nazi scientists proposed that the brain has a universal kill switch that activates as soon as the brain has fully developed. In all normal humans, this kill switch will initiate a shutdown sequence over bodily functions, which occurs over several decades. As soon as the body is fully shut down, the brain will be forced to die through lack of oxygenated blood. It is said that Werner's syndrome, a disease where a person ages rapidly, is a result of the kill switch function activating far too early. The Nazis proposed that they could remove this kill switch and give the human mind immortality, and from that, complete immortality. Needless to say, brain surgery was incredibly difficult during these times, but it was possible. In the stacks of folders that were found, many different diagrams and past research on the brain, psychology, were found, as well as the human mind and the like. The location. The experiments were initially proposed to Nazi executives in 1940, and permission was granted to perform the experiments in 1942, under one condition. The experiments must be conducted outside of Germany. The German populace must not see this experiment in any way, shape, or form. It was no surprise to the scientists that the executives were paranoid about public relations, but the idea of performing the research outside of the fatherland was foreign in itself. Most experiments were performed in bunkers or basements. Regardless though, the scientists complied and were able to organize a setup with their ally Japan. In late 1942, their research had begun. Now here's where the story gets strange. The research team had taken over a Japanese orphanage. The orphanage was in the hills, supposedly somewhere in Shinmei, an area nearby Hiroshima. carrying out the experiments. The scientists deduced that if they tried to take the usual test subjects, old or diseased people with nothing left to live for, they would be playing with the variable of disease. Or more importantly, they would be experimenting on a brain that already had an activated kill switch, rendering it useless in the context of finding the solution. As a result, the Nazi scientists demanded that children, namely the orphans in the orphanage, would become the test subjects, their young brains eliminating any cause for concern of an already activated kill switch. To begin the experiments, the children went through numerous immunizations and intense psychological testing to ensure that they would prevent any defects and keep a general benchmark for the subjects. Next, they began with the older staff of the orphanage, and while under anesthetic, the surgeons opened up their skulls to find a good cross-section of an adult brain and begin to find key differences between it and a child's. After gaining a model of both a child brain and an adult's, the scientists deduced that the universal kill switch was not located in the brain at all, but rather in the cerebellum, closer to the real. The cerebellum commanding all subconscious activity in the brain, which is understandable since it isn't a conscious action to set off the kill switch. Systematically, they took the tallest child in the orphanage and began to open her up. They were about to begin their first kill switchectomy. They had managed to open up the cerebellum and remove the part presumed to be the kill switch. However, upon closing the subject up, they found that she had expired. They assumed that the incision on the brain had been too brash and required far more precision. The body was unceremoniously dumped in the forest behind the orphanage. Success, presumably. After imports of different tools and different techniques developed, the scientists were finally able to remove the kill switch and successfully revive the patients. In May 1943, they had taken one of the youngest girls in the orphanage and removed her kill switch. And the only function she lost was the ability to sweat. After their assumed success, the scientists had celebrated, after which everyone went to sleep. The next morning, though, the girl did not wake up and was revealed to be comatose. After a while, she was revived successfully, and the kill switchectomies continued. Continuation. The initial success gave the doctors a new state of mind, one of refreshment now. They were able to continue their experiments with ease of mind that the theory was proven, or so they assumed. Before the doctors continued their removal research, they commissioned several doctors in from Moscow, who were trained in the practice of bodily revival. Technically, it's amplification. However, it relies on the principle of using electric shocks and artificial hearts to power the body back up. They stated the reason was that the original subject always became comatose or clinically dead whenever she went to sleep, and then revived herself in the morning. She had no signs of this behavior before the experiment, and despite the fact that she was revived, the doctors did not want to risk the success turning into a failure. The Russian scientists were put onto the task of bringing her back to life whenever she expired. After several days of this, the Nazis concluded that it was safe to continue. Project Venom. Project Venom was a Russian experiment to create super soldiers from the theory of Dr. Frankenstein. It may also form a basis for the Marvel superhero as well, but I digress. As a repayment for the use of the Russian scientists, Russia had asked that they combine the research of Project Venom with the Nazis' ongoing experiments. And naturally, the Nazis agreed. However, the limited number of the orphans was so debilitating, as the Nazis required so many of them, and could only offer a single girl. However, the Russians were content and began their proof of concept. They had artificially created an arm over in Moscow, which was on its way to the orphanage to be grafted on, to prove that amputation and replacement could work. In the meantime, the Russians had to prepare for this. In preparation, the right arm of the girl was amputated. Mysteriously, though, Shortly after, the Russian scientists packed up their equipment and left. The replacement arm never arrived, and the girl was left with a bandage strapped over her kimono perpetually. The Russians were said to have left with a fearful haste, as if the air had suddenly turned too cold for even their tastes. Rebellion. One child out of the whole orphanage did not approve of the scientist's presence. In her acts of rebellion, she stole paperwork and ripped it to shreds, broke glassware and wrecked surgery theaters. Despite her young age, only 8 at the time, and size, she had a surprising capacity for destruction. It was noted in a journal that she was heterochromic as well, and had brown and blue eyes from left to right. The senior scientist despised her, but could not restrain her without arousing suspicion. Instead, they ordered the Nazi soldiers to take care of her. She was brutally beheaded with a blunt bayonet, and was neither buried, just left in the woods behind the orphanage. The soldiers told the caretakers that she had found a new family. Numerous failures. The Nazi scientists attempted to play around with their successful experiment by trying different aspects. Sadly, none of them worked. Here is a short list. Hands free through the forehead, performed on a 10-year-old boy. Skull was deformed and the boy had been virtually lobotomized by the end of it. However, he wasn't vegetative as a result, although he was mentally retarded due to the experiment. Entry through the lower jaw, performed on a 6-year-old girl. The tongue and most of the flesh in the lower jaw was removed and could no longer be replaced. The subject's sinuses were also scrambled. Entry through the side of the head. The subject was reluctantly half deaf. It should also be noted that there was no anesthetic used during the surgery and the screams were truly mortifying, as most journals read. Despite these failures, though, the kill switches were still removed, and the subject acted much in the same way as the first, expiring upon sleep. However, they were reduced to a mere 10 people due to all the previous failures. This was including the caretakers, and they had performed surgery on all of the children. Kill switch reversal. The doctors began to formulate ideas that in a child, a kill switch isn't already activated, but in an adult, a kill switch could be reversed using a chemical compound to eliminate the hormone produced, and then the kill switch is removed. This was performed on all the caretakers and was, surprisingly, successful, as they had all survived. Personalities gone awry. During the experiments, the scientists were told to watch over the successful children and monitor their behavior. Now this is where it gets really strange. They appear normal at first, just like any other children, playing, cheering, learning normally. But when separated from the others, they seem off. They stroll carelessly around with a blank smile on their faces, their eyes looking straight through you. If approached from behind, their heads snap around with an ungodly speed, and for a moment, you can almost see an expression so vile on their face that it would make you want to cower. But then you realize they are just forming their dreamy smile again. Another thing is that they follow us, but only when we are on our own. After finishing on my typewriter and heading to my room, I'm often given a fright by one of the children standing several meters down the dark hallway, staring at me. When I go off to my room, she follows me, and I shut my door and jam a chair beneath it. And then I sleep safely. It feels as though they're ghosts at night time. And the funny thing is, I keep seeing one child with reddish hair. I keep asking who the child is the next morning, but the caretaker says they haven't had a child with reddish hair for a while. They also seem to be playing a game a lot more than when we started. I haven't got much knowledge of Japanese, but it seems the game is named Circle You, as described by one of our translators. A group of children surround one child who sits in the center alone, and they link arms and begin to move in a circular manner around the child, making scary faces and singing an eerie chant. And you lose if you flinch. Upon talking to them, I have noticed they seem more dreamy, sometimes forgetful and blank, as if the experiments wipe their memories as well. But it's not an innocent type of dreaming. Rather something that's more sinister. They stare at you with wide eyes and ask you questions that you thought they would never know. One of them asked me, "When your grandmother died, did she really leave you a gold-plated watch?" Now, it may seem insane, but my honest answer was, yes. Kagome, Kagome means circle, circle. The game literally translates to circle you, circle you. And the child who rebelled against the scientists had reddish hair. Demise. In early 1945, Hiroshima was bombed. Germany forfeits and the experiments are ground to a halt. The Germans begin packing up their equipment. Most of them are already returning home due to their mental welfare, stating that they showed signs of insanity, and only 4 scientists remained. After sending the last set of equipment off, the scientists deemed it only justified that they informed the caretakers that they were leaving, and they did so. And to the horror of one of the scientists, and to the surprise of the rest, the head caretaker said, in fluent German, "Will you play one last game with us?" The 3 scientists agreed, and a circle of children and caretakers formed around them. Now if you flinch, you lose. One of the horrified scientists ran to the last trunk and jumped in it without looking back. The story as it is now. If you go to Hiroshima, go around the woods and you may find some dirt trails there. If you travel down them, you will see beautiful forest. But if you travel down one that has signs of trucks going through, you will feel cold. And if you see that a lot of the trees are cut down, but don't wander from the path, or you will likely get lost in those vast woods. If you pay attention, you will notice that the tree stumps look like kneeling people, missing their heads. If you continue on, the air will get cold. Naturally, because you're climbing uphill, right? Of course. Eventually, you will reach a clearing, with an old stone building in its center with vines covering the place. Now go inside, if you'd like to play. As soon as you open the door, a foul smell will come out, similar to that of a rotting corpse. If you look down the hall, it will be dark regardless of the time of day, since there are no longer any lights. Continue down the hall and take the first left, and go down that hall until you see one door that appears to be made of a red-colored wood. You will notice that the rest are brown, and open the door, and you will find 10 happy children and caretakers, all wearing kimonos playing in a normal playroom. One is missing her arm, another is missing his forehead, and a third lacks a jaw. But all are bandaged with clinical precision. The place should be very clean, depending on your standard of such things, and for the most part well lit. At once your presence will draw the attention of everyone in the room, including the ones that look far too preoccupied or distracted. They will turn to you, carefree smiles on each of their pleasant faces. The head caretaker will ask, in all her beauty, "Will you come and play with us?" By this time, if you haven't soiled your pants, you really should, so save yourself the trouble later. If you say no, the door will slam shut on you, and if you try to go down the hallways out the exit, you will only find another dark hallway. Open any of the brown doors and you should find operating tables or bunk beds. If you continue down the third hallway, you will realize that a girl is standing several meters behind you, her face shrouded by shadow. Approach her and expect your doom. Continue down the hallway and try not to let her catch up with you. If you say yes, however, you will be welcomed into the room, and the door will close behind you, and everyone will form a circle around you. "Now sit down and don't flinch," a cheerful voice will say. "Just follow the instructions, and you may yet survive." All light will disappear from the room, yet you can clearly see the circle of children, each with a vicious expression on their face, one so vile that you will probably flinch. If you can stomach that so, they will begin to move around you, and around you slowly. You may feel one of them last towards you. If you look, however, there will be nothing there, besides the children circling normally. If that wasn't enough, they will begin chanting, Kagome, Kagome. I really can't explain it any further, as no one ever lives to tell the tale of what happens next. If you flinch before they chant, they will simply continue as normal. If you choose to say maybe to the head of the caretakers, or anything other than yes or no, it is told that the children's expressions will turn mortifying, Zargonic almost, and they will scream in inhuman voices, Decide! Decide! If you do anything besides say yes or no from here, it is told that the children and caretakers will slam the door on you. And if you turn around, the story varies. Supposedly, your worst fear will be awaiting at the other end of the hallway, separating you from your exit. Most notably, this character is Arcamanto, or as he is known in the States, as the Rake. The least you could do is greet the creature before he tears you onto oblivion. If he has the capacity, he may well respond, and you will die as a polite person. Don't greet him, and you will end up as another one of the beheaded bodies along the trail. If you respond, I don't understand, and you must be genuine, the head caretaker will say, go to your school and watch your children play. You should understand then. Nothing will have changed. And close the door on your way out, as it's common courtesy. Disclaimer. This account is not fabricated. It may be derived from some sources that are dubious, certainly, but this one is not. And I will bring this into clear focus. As Germany did send a research team to Japan to experiment immortality via the brain, and they did experiment on children in an orphanage.